Today I want to go through talking about a few different tools that we can use in our workshop, and also running through how you can make a few of these. Now essentially you can use anything that you want to make a mark. You can use, the sky's the limit really in terms of what you can create. Things that I've used before and continue to use are toothbrushes. Old toothbrushes are excellent ways to reuse them. Sponge brushes that you can get. You can even just fold a sponge onto the end of a stick. That's very easy to use. Old crayons from the kids, texters, you know, pencils that you might have. One of my favourite things is using some sticks. So I've got, you know, this is a pretty cool stick that I found in the park, and I use that quite a lot, but you can literally use any stick. This is an old eyeliner that has run out that I use to dip in ink. You can use so many different tools, really just scour around and see what you've got. This is a pipette, I think they're called, where you suck the ink up and you can spit it out the end. You know, there is really so many options. Just look around your house, see what you've got. Paddle pop sticks are great. Cut up credit cards are excellent. I'm going to go through an example here. So just some scrap cardboard that you might have from packaging. Cut this into a range of shapes. So, you know, I've used one that's got a curved edge here, which is really great. You can just use it flat. You can make them really wide to get, you know, a huge amount of ink coverage when we start playing. Really anything that you can find in your rubbish bin is worth trying. One of my other favourite things that I've played with is toilet rolls. So, you know, grab your old toilet roll and maybe fold it into a different shape. You know, you can cut it up, you can cut into it. There's really so many things that you can experiment with, and I just put an elastic around this tool to be able to hold it together, and you know, it can create some really interesting shapes with that, and you can make a range of those depending on what you want to play with. This is another nice idea if you've got some bubble wrap lying around. Just honestly, it's get an elastic band or some tape. You can just, you know, it's literally a bit of scrap that I've got. Squeeze it up in a ball and try different things. You know, you might want to cut into that. You might want to make it quite bulbous. And then just, you know, you put your tape around that and you've got a new tool that we can play with. So really, there is so many options you can do. You can essentially use anything that you want that's around the house. So we've gone through those. Now, something that I do enjoy using, which really kind of replicates what we can do with the cardboard mark maker, but this is balsa wood, and you can buy this from an arts and crafts shop, and it's really nice and smooth, and you can get different thicknesses. So I've got some here, you know, that are quite thick, if you can see that, and then I've got some here that's quite thin and flexible, and you can actually cut this into different widths, you know, shapes, all sorts of things. So this is another really nice item to get, that you can get from a hardware store or a craft store or a hobby store. But honestly, if you don't have something like this, cardboard works really, really well, especially at the moment when we're just, you know, really trying out all sorts of different things. So absolutely, there's no need to go out and buy tools. I really want this to be about like searching for what you've got at home that we can, you know, experiment with and play with. So one of the tools that is probably something you do want to look to make, other than these kind of cardboard ones, and I'll just move these out of the way for now, is these Kohler pens. Now you might have, if you've been following me a while or some other people, you might have seen me use this sort of tool before. Now this is essentially made from some sort of aluminium drinks can, and it's made with an old paintbrush, some tape, or a pencil, sorry, and you can really experiment with some interesting things with these tools. Now, I'm going to run through a basic lesson in how you can make one of these at home. If you don't get a chance to do this before the workshop, that's fine. It's not an issue. You can absolutely, do it in your own time, revert back to the video later to have a look at. But it's a really great, tool to experiment with, and it makes some fantastic marks when you can play with it. So we're going to go through and make one of these today, because it does take a little bit more work. So what you're going to need to make this is an old pencil of some sort, a Sharpie marker or a permanent marker, something that you can draw on with. A little bit of sandpaper is useful, some scissors, some sort of tape, and the main winner is a can of some sort. Okay, so they're the items that you're going to need to start with here. Now, I'll just move these to the side. You do need to be a bit careful with this, and it's probably not something to do with the kids around. But essentially, we're going to cut the middle of the can out. So you need to get a hole in the can. This can be a little bit tricky. Just be careful when you're doing this. And you're going to cut down the can, and then you're going to cut around the top and the bottom. And again, be very careful with this. You might get some bits of aluminium on the paper below, so make sure you're doing it in a reasonably child-free area. Can be sharp. A bit over there. It's a good time to make this after the festive season, when you might have been more likely to have some sort of special drinks around. Okay, so now this is going to be quite sharp on the edges, okay, so just be careful. We're just going to cut this in half now as well. I washed this up and it's still got some bubbles in it. Now there's, so now we've got two pieces. We can actually cut this again in half here, and we'll be able to make probably 4 different nibs. Now a Kohler pen is a really great experimental tool, and as you get more confident, you can actually make a whole lot of different things with it. I'm just going to get one of these pieces to start with, so I'll move the other ones away. So I've got my one piece here, if we get that in view. We've got our piece that we've cut out. Now you're going to have some sharp edges here, so just be really careful of those at the moment. Now we're going to actually, it can work in a number of ways. You can use the long rectangle, or you can actually cut it down to a square, but for the sake of today we'll just use this long rectangle. Now you want to fold it in half, again being very careful not to scratch yourself. You don't want to make this too sharp, like the fold, because that's where the ink's going to sit in that reservoir in there. So we're just going to fold that there. Okay, and then we're going to unfold it again here, and we're going to draw on here. Now this doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just going to kind of draw this Y shape here, which we're going to cut out. Okay, and look, the more you play with these, the more you can kind of play with different shapes and designs and all those sorts of things. So, that's something that you can experiment with over time. There's a bunch of different options that you can look at doing. as well to get different designs, like these sort of square ones. You can play with them a whole bunch of ways. Anyway, once we've got this like Y shape, we're going to take our pencil here and we're going to essentially put it in here and make this the stem of our pen. Now what we want to do is, we don't want to have it all the way up here because it's going to be too open. You can see there, it's going to be too open there, but we also don't want to have it too far down because then this is going to be too flimsy and we're not going to be able to use it to write. So sort of about halfway up is a good place to put your pencil. And we're going to take the tape here and just sort of bring it out. Now, holding that tightly around your pen, we're just going to kind of wrap that, and then we're going to take it around. You might have to press down a bit to make it tight enough. Kind of going to wrap it around several times, and going over the pencil edge, where it connects to the pencil as well. So you can use electrical tape or masking tape or duct tape. Doesn't really matter. Sticky tape probably even. Okay. So once we've sort of got that all sorted. Okay. Now we've sort of got, you can see that it's coming together. But what we need to do here is now sort of shape it. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. If we look at some, of the ones that I've already done, you can see that there's some differences in the shapes of those depending on the size. So that one was a smaller can, a smaller piece of aluminium. You can start it bigger and then kind of cut it down, which is also good. So essentially you're just going to cut it like this. You can see that. Take your scissors. Now the more curved that is, the more the less you'll have kind of a wide girth to play with. So I think starting wider first is quite a good idea, because then you can always cut it down later or make other ones. You might also decide not to make it so pointed. You might want to make it, more flat like this as well. So there's a bunch of different things that you can play with. And as I said, I encourage you to kind of make a few over time and see what works. Now, that's sort of done. What is nice, this can be quite sharp now. So if you do have a little bit of sandpaper, it's a good idea to just sand some of those edges off a little bit, because it does help when you then put the ink in there. It also makes it a little bit safer. So some of that can be quite sharp. Okay. Now I'm squeezing it in here now around that pencil. We can see that it's sort of got quite a nice opening there, which is going to hold quite a lot of ink. And now we can dip that in our ink and we can actually play with it. So let's just have a look at what that looks like. Put some ink in here. So this is the ink that I recommend using. You can also use gouache or other acrylic paint with a little bit of water, but I find that this ink doesn't spill. It doesn't bleed as much on the paper. So I'll just squeeze some in here. And I'll just grab a little bit of paper. Okay, so let's see now how this works when we dip it in the ink. Okay. So you can hold it a number of ways as well, but let's try. also hold it like this. So again, because I've made it quite flat along here, it's making quite a different mark. If we went with something that's more pointed, as you can see with this one, in a smaller bit of can, so you could start with a smaller bit of can, you can see that the marks can be quite different. And this one's been probably less sanded back with the sandpaper, so you can see that you make a lot more kind of flicky marks with this. So I'll just do one more. And the other thing is, at this point I could actually recut this as well. So if I decided I wasn't super happy with it, I can actually cut this down like this. Cut that bit off, throw that in the bin, and I can play with this again. So let's just give this a go now that we've changed the shape of it. Okay. So it makes a really rough noise, so if you've got a problem with that, you might not want to play with this sort of pen. So you can see, the difference between how the marks work dependent on how the brush, how you cut the pen out. And they're lots of fun to play with, to make, to experiment with. And I encourage you to have those ready for the workshop. Okay, so you can see that we've made a range of pens. We've got a huge variety of things that we can play with for this workshop. If you've got any questions, let me know. I'm really excited to be with you, to talk with you, to see you, and we're going to have lots of fun together. So all the best. If you've got any questions, just send me an email, and I will see you on the 8th. Bye.